since it looks like it might be just you and me. Oh, hi, Wendy. I think we talked as well. Sorry to hear that. So Julian, since you were here first, or at least you're the first when I actually restarted, tell me what was your question? Maybe I can answer it. And while you're getting that together, I had a question in the in somewhere, I don't remember where they were talking about the labrum, and so I'm going to just do a quick anatomy lesson and some ideas of what the labrum is and how we might describe it in surgery, because there's confusion for sure. Okay. So we look at the labrum. If we're looking face on at the socket, right? That's the socket is the labrum. Let me make sure I get the right here, right? So the socket looks like this. It's round. It doesn't exactly like this. Not exactly round either, but it's close. And then we have the labrum is the stuff that goes around the socket, right? Oh my, I need some work on this. And the biceps comes up and attaches to the top of the socket here, okay? So if this is, we say this is the front of the socket or the anterior aspect of the socket. We say this is the back of the socket or the posterior aspect of the socket. We say this is the inferior or the low part. We say this is the superior or the high part, right? And so when we look at the socket, we talk about positions on a clock. So this is 12. This is 3. This is 6. And this is 9. And as you can imagine, there's numbers in between just like the clock. So someone called in and asked about, she had a repair, and they said, I think 7 and 9 or something like that. So 7 and 9 would be back here. So that's a posterior labral tear. And that's a little less unusual or a little less common. Usually when we have labral tears, we'll have it up here. So like the 12 o'clock position, that we call that the slap. That's the S in the slap. Or we have it in the front. We call that a Bankart. So if we did a Bankart, if some dislocated the shoulder, we did a repair, reconstruction. So what we do, we might put an anchor here. We'd say at the 1:30 or 2 o'clock position, maybe the 3 o'clock position, and maybe the 5 o'clock position, maybe the 6, depending how it is. And so that's what we say, the position, we say where we put the anchors. And so if someone had a labral tear in a younger person dislocation, we would usually put it would be usually in the front. And if we can have posterior instability, so we can repair it back here. It's just not as common. Or if we have the slap tear, we'll repair it here. Or of course, we'll do the biceps tenotomy, get rid of it, reattach it out in the outside of the shoulder. So that's one thing we talked about, the slap tear and the slap repair, and then the labrum. Okay, so we'll clear the layer. Let me get back to this and see if we have anything else. All right, so let's see, Julian. So we're talking labrum. Yes. So is it possible to re-tear just by moving your shoulder around? Unfortunately, it is possible. Hopefully not. It seems at 4 months, you would think it would be pretty stable. Usually about 3 months, we have a pretty good stability of the repair. So just crossing your arms over 4 months down the road seems a bit unusual. Unfortunately, we wouldn't really know without probably an MRI arthrogram, right? The arthrogram is when we put the dye in the shoulder first, and then the MRI, you may have had that before. So maybe, but it's probably worth looking at it again if it's really hurting you. If it doesn't get better in the next few weeks, check with your doc for sure. Angie Bean, Angie, where are you calling from, or where are you watching from? And same with Wendy and Harp and Hank, these guys, I appreciate you coming. I know I messed up a little bit, not quite as bad as last week though, so that's good, or last month, that's good. But let me know where you're coming from, where you're watching from, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about one more thing, and hopefully get a few more people on. I'm going to go back to the drawing tablet because I think it's super cool. But we'll look at this picture. This picture is an arthritic shoulder, right? We see that there's not any space between the ball and the socket. We see a little spur here that's probably broken. And so this is a really arthritic shoulder. Usually we'll see that kind of light gray space that's up here. You see that gray space all the way through. So this is an arthritic shoulder. So if we have an arthritic shoulder, we talk about doing one of two things for an arthritic shoulder. We talk about an anatomic shoulder or a reverse shoulder. So let's go to the drawing table and kind of explain that quickly. Okay, so here we are. Let me get down here. We have the socket. Right, sorry, we have the ball, we have the socket, right? And so if this is all messed up in here, then we have to replace it. If we have a good rotator cuff, then we can do what's called an anatomic. An anatomic means where the socket was, we put a little plastic piece. It's actually not quite like this, but sort of like that, right? And where the ball was, we put a little metal piece. So I need to stop pressing that button. All right, so the metal piece, and that metal piece has actually a stem that goes down, a metal piece, and then we have the bone around it, right? And then we have the rotator cuff hold that all together. So if you have a rotator cuff, and we have another muscle in the front called the subscapularis, that holds it, that links it together, right? That's an anatomic rotator cuff, or sorry, that's an anatomic shoulder replacement. If we do not have an anatomic shoulder replacement, or sorry, if we do not have a rotator cuff that's working, then that will not work, right? So if we don't have an anatomic, or we don't have a rotator cuff that's working, that linkage between the ball and socket is not there. And if that linkage is not there, then the ball and socket slide in the rotator cuff expert apparently. Then the joint will slide and it won't work. It'll not function right. Okay, so if we go, let me get back to here. All right. So if instead we don't have an anatomic replacement, so if we can make it tight enough with a reverse. So the reverse is the ball, little screw here and here and here usually, is where the socket is, and then the socket is where the ball is, and then the socket is where the ball used to be, right? So it's a reverse, and so this is a piece of plastic here, and then again there's a stem that goes down through here. Okay, why is that important? Well, the reverse, we can make this tight enough so we can just have that flowing back rotator cuff here. We don't need the rotator cuff because we can make it tight enough in the reverse. And that's why we would do a reverse on an irreparable or a rotator cuff that was torn and then, or was repaired and then tore again. We might consider doing a reverse total shoulder replacement. So those are the two things I got questions about. So I'm gonna stop this, I'm gonna clear this, and I'm gonna get back to y'all. I say y'all because I'm in Georgia. Okay, and so again, one more picture. So this is actually a rotator cuff tear. The rotator cuff is way down here. It ought to be up here. You get torn and pulled back, and usually when it's torn way far back like this, it's not repairable. Then we have to do the reverse. Okay, sorry, back. Okay, so I need to go up, and we're gonna go through some of these questions so I make it worth your while today. Surgery in February, Angie. Let's see. Wendy Lawrence, what does it mean if you say the ball is smooth like a cue ball? So usually that means, I would guess, all right, so we don't usually use these exact terms. I would guess that means it's an arthritic ball. So let me show you again. So I'm trying to draw better. I'm not a good drawer, but if we look at the ball, all right, and that ball has a layer of cartilage on it, okay? So when that layer of cartilage goes away, that's what we call arthritis. So when that layer goes away, then it looks really hard, like a cue ball. I would guess that's what they mean, but I don't know that for sure. But that would be my best guess as orthopedic talk. Okay? All right. Mr. Hank, load. So you say 2 LTTs. Want to make sure I understand what you're saying. What does that mean to you? So just give me another question below that. Frozen shoulder. Sorry, Lawrence. Yeah, so I think Julian is probably right. Sorry, Julian, you're answering questions. I appreciate that. If you can't move, if it's really stiff, meaning that it's not like if you go to the therapist and the therapist can move it, right? But you can't move it, then that's different. If you can't move it, and even when you go to therapy, they can't move it, then that is a stiff shoulder, potentially what we call a frozen shoulder. The frozen shoulder, unfortunately, in general, frozen shoulders are not really, you can see some things on MRIs in frozen shoulder, but in general, an MRI is not going to really show that. It's really going to be the clinical exam of your shoulder. So anyway, before we get any further, Again, this is general advice, right? This is general advice for me. I'm just a dude on a YouTube channel, so don't take this as medical advice. If you need medical advice, you need to go to your medical doctor. I am a doctor, but I'm not your doctor. So that's an important caveat to say. I will talk in generalities about the questions you give me, but the specifics are impossible because I would need to know all your details, and I would need to actually see you, probably move your shoulder, get evaluation. So just know this is just general advice for some dude on the internet. Thanks. Okay. Pittsburgh. I went to med school in Philadelphia. Another one so Angie and Stephanie, both from PA. I spent a lot of time in Philadelphia and in a little bit of time in Pittsburgh at Mercy for peds, and then most of the time in Philly, Pittsburgh, and then Danville, Pennsylvania. Went to Geisinger for my residency, and then down to Richmond, Virginia for my fellowship, but that's beside the point. Okay, Hank, right, left, hard shell brace, poor rehab, having problems. I don't know what the hard shell brace, you have to, again, I'm sorry, Hank, I'm not following you. I'm sorry. Wendy, Missouri, welcome from Missouri. I don't know what LTT means. I should, but I'm sorry, I'm not sure. So if you can give me another crack at that, Hank. Daniel, St. Louis, Missouri. Awesome. Good luck on your surgery. I'm put a bunch of new videos out. Super excited. Really kind of doubled down in the last month or so. So there's some really good videos coming out. Some updated videos. So check those out in your recovery. A cheap plug, right, Dan? This is the post-op shoulder journal. We have a PDF version as well as a physical journal. Might want to check that out. I think it does help recovery and getting your things in a row and neatly, knowing your pain level, questions for your surgeon, all those kind of things. But that's a cheap plug. It's actually a free plug, I guess. It's probably sponsored by me, I guess. Okay, so Wendy. Well, either way, I think. If your shoulder's stiff and you have conflicting doctors, then yeah, I think probably another opinion is probably right. And unfortunately, a third opinion is painful, but I think you probably need to make sure you get all the information you can. Okay, so Julie, I'm going to read the question. Is it possible to tear the part of the labrum that wasn't operated on? Like if he operated on the anterior, when I cross my arms, is it possible to tear the posterior? It is, but it would have to be really set up, right? It would have to be really weak, and you would think that if that was the case, then probably that would have been repaired at the same time they repaired the front. Usually there's different mechanisms. It's unusual for you to tear the posterior one way and the anterior one way. Posterior, again, is a little bit less common, but it would be really unusual. So it is possible, but it would be really unusual. Yes, Julie, sorry, disclaimer at the beginning. I got so excited that we were actually going, I thought. I'll put it at the end as well. Yes. All right. Okay, Lisa, thanks for helping Hank with his message. Hard shell gunslinger. Oh, my goodness. So you had lower trap transfer, Achilles, and that's a big deal. That's a hard one. Yeah, so you got to be really, really restrictive in lower trap transfers. Good luck with that, because that's a big deal. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome, Dan O'Shilo, for the sleeping ideas. Again, I just did a video today, and I put in a few new nuggets, things that actually I think work that aren't generally known. So it'll be out soon. But I'm really excited about the video. I think it's going to be great. Okay. Yeah, so Lisa Peters, right lower trap transfer, hard shell gunslinger. I think the lower trap transfer is really a different beast for us. That's a really, really different surgery than most of us as surgeons go, because it's not typical. I think the results are good if done well, and so hopefully it was done well, and you just take time. And the thing is that hard shell gunslinger is really a unique product, not a product that I prefer, but you have to really be really protective of the graft, of the Achilles, or whatever else they use for the graft. So that's a really, really big deal. Okay, Miss Stephanie M. I have a rotator cuff repair surgery scheduled in May for full thickness tear with retraction. Is it normal to wait a month before starting PT? It can be. Is it normal? I don't normally, unless it's a really, really bad tear and I have a hard time fixing it. And so I really want to wait a little bit more time before we get someone moving it for you. So there's a concern, but I think there are surgeons out there that would wait a month regardless. I think that if we look at the recoveries, as long as you're actually having some motion, like maybe you're doing some motion yourself, I think would be helpful. But Lisa, yes, torture, I'm sure. So I think that you probably can't type at all if he's on that gunslinger either. Sorry. So retraction is the therapy after surgery. It's a little bit long, but so Stephanie, are they having you do any exercises at home before that month is up, or is that all you're doing? So I'll give you a second to answer that. Yeah, so I think that we lost a few people in the delay, in the switching of my my live to another live. Frustrating for sure. I thought I had this all set up. Okay. So any other questions, let me know. We're going to do this. All right. So this is a picture, a cartoon, or as we say in orthopedics, of the rotator cuff in the shoulder. And so it's important to know the anatomy. And this actually anatomy is not quite right. But we have that biceps coming down here. We have this long head of the biceps going to come all the way down. And there's the long head is going to come all the way down to your elbow. This is the subscapularis. So this is the scapula. Why we call it the subscapularis is because it's underneath the scapula. This whole stuff comes here, comes across, attaches here. This is the biceps tendon. The biceps actually comes in here. It doesn't go up there. It comes in here between the subscapularis and the supraspinatus. And there's a little thing called the sling. The sling is actually what holds the biceps tendon in the groove. So the little groove in the bone. We're going to go back to the drawing tablet just for a moment to try to explain that. So if we look at the ball from top down, so the ball looks like this. And if we go down a little further, we have a little divot where the biceps attaches, or the biceps is in the groove. So this little divot, not in the ball, just below the ball before it comes all the way up into the shoulder. And then we have a little of ligament across it, right? That ligament helps hold this biceps in. And then we have the subscapularis that comes across here and attached. So it's looking as if we're looking top down on this. So if this was the back of your shoulder was up here, this is the back, and this is the front, this is the outside, your chest would be in here. So we're looking kind of top down. The biceps in here, and we have this little ligament that holds it in place. Subscapularis is here. So usually if we have an injury to the biceps, if it disrupts this part, and then the biceps slides out, oftentimes slide here, or it might even slide underneath the subscap if we have a subscap tear. And that's why if we have the biceps subluxar slide out, and either way, we would have to either repair this little ligament, which is really hard to do. It's not a very strong ligament. So usually if we have an unstable biceps, we will release it, right? We talked about this before, and you probably heard it a million times. So there's the ball, goodness me. And then if the biceps is here, and that sling is holding it in there, we might just bring it down here and reattach it here. That way we don't have to worry about the sling at all. We don't have to worry about this ligament at all holding it. We just attach it here with a little screw. Or down below, this would be the super pec, because the pec comes across here, right? Super means above pec, and this would be the sub pec, which would be down here. I like the super. I think it's a little bit easier to get to. There's more biceps tendon to work with. Down here, there's more of the muscle, less of the tendon, and I think anatomically it makes a little bit more sense, and the scar looks a little bit better. But anyway, so that's what we talk about, the biceps and the biceps of a unstable biceps. Let me get back to Let me take this off. Let me get back to my screen here. Okay, that's it. Yeah, so Lisa, I apologize for you because you're being tortured as well with the hard shell gun slinger.